Miracle of the Sun, October 13, 1917. During the night of October 12 and 13, it had rained throughout, soaking the ground and the pilgrims who make their way to Fátima from all directions by thousands. By foot, by cart, or even by car, they came entering the bowl of the Cova from the Fátima Leira road, which today still passes in front of the large square of the Basilica. From there, they made their way down the gently slope to the place where a trestle had been erected over the little home of the apparitions. Today, on the site is a modern glass and steel capellinha, little chapel enclosing the first chapel built there, and the statue of Our Lady of the Rosary of Fátima, where the home oak had stood. As for the children, they made their way to the Cova amid the adulation and skepticism which had followed them since May. When they arrived, they found critics who questioned their veracity and punctuality of the lady, who had promised to arrive at noon. It was well past noon by the official time of the country. However, when the sun arrived at its zenith, the lady appeared as she had said she would. "What do you want of me?" "I want a chapel built here in my honor. I want you to continue saying the rosary every day. The war will end soon, and the soldiers will return to their homes." "Yes, yes." "Will you tell me your name?" "I am the Lady of the Rosary. I have many petitions for many people. Will you grant them?" "Some I shall grant, and others I must deny. People must amend their lives and ask pardon for their sins. They must not offend our Lord anymore, for he is already too much offended." "And is that all you have to ask?" "There is nothing more." As the Lady of the Rosary rises toward the east, she turns the palms of her hands towards the dark sky. While the rain had stopped, dark clouds continued to obscure the sun, which suddenly burst through them as it seemed to be a soft, spinning disk of silver. "Look at the sun." From this point, two distinct apparitions were seen: that of the phenomenon of the sun seen by the 70,000 or so spectators, and that beheld by the children alone. Lucia describes the latter in her memoirs. After Our Lady had disappeared into the immense distance of the firmament, we beheld Saint Joseph with the child Jesus, and Our Lady robed in white with a blue mantle beside the sun. Saint Joseph and the child Jesus seemed to bless the world, for they traced the sign of the cross with their hands. When a little later this apparition disappeared, I saw our Lord and Our Lady. It seemed to me that it was Our Lady of Sorrows. Our Lord appeared to bless the world in the same manner as Saint Joseph had done. This apparition also vanished, and I saw Our Lady once more, this time resembling Our Lady of Carmel. This would be the last of the apparitions of Fátima for Jacinta and Francisco. However, for Lucia, Our Lady would return a seventh time in 1920, as she had promised the previous May. At that time, Lucia would be praying in the Cova before leaving Fátima for a girls' boarding school. The lady would come to urge her to dedicate herself wholly to God. As the children viewed the various apparitions of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, the crowd witnessed a different prodigy, the now famous miracle of the sun. Eyewitness accounts of the miracle of the sun. A pro-government, anti-clerical Lisbon paper, O Século, writes, "From the road where the vehicles were parked and where hundreds of people who had not dared to brave the mud were congregated. One could see the immense multitude turn toward the sun, which appeared free from clouds and in its zenith. It looked like a plaque of dull silver, and it was possible to look at it without the least discomfort. It might have been an eclipse which was taking place, but at that moment a great shout went up, and one could hear the spectators nearest at hand shouting, "A miracle! A miracle!" Before the astonished eyes of the crowd, whose aspect was biblical as they stood bareheaded, eagerly searching the sky, the sun trembled, made sudden incredible movements outside all cosmic laws. The sun danced according to the typical expression of the people. Standing at the step of an omnibus was an old man. With his face turned to the sun, he recited the credo in a loud voice. I asked who he was and was told, Señor João da Cunha Vasconcelos. I saw him afterwards going up to those around him who still had their hats on and vehemently imploring them to uncover before such an extraordinary demonstration of the existence of God. Identical scenes were repeated elsewhere, and in one place a woman cried out, "How terrible!" There are even men who do not uncover before such a stupendous miracle. People then began to ask each other what they had seen. The great majority admitted to having seen the trembling and the dancing of the sun. Others affirmed that they saw the face of the Blessed Virgin. Others, again, swore that the sun whirled on itself like a giant Catherine wheel, and that it lowered itself to the earth as if to burn it in its race. Some said they saw it change colors successively. Again, this was all secular, pro-government, anti-clerical Lisbon paper. On another Lisbon daily edition of October 17, 1917, called O Dia, writes like this. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, midday by the sun, the rain stopped. The sky, pearly gray in color, illuminated the vast arid landscape with a strange light. The sun had a transparent gauzy veil, so that the eyes could easily be fixed upon it. The gray mother-of-pearl tone turned into a sheet of silver, which broke up as the clouds were torn apart, and the silver sun, enveloped in the same gauzy gray light, was seen to whirl and turn in the circle of broken clouds. A cry went up from every mouth, and people fell on their knees on the muddy ground. The light turned a beautiful blue, as if it had come through the stained glass windows of a cathedral, and spread itself over the people who knelt with outstretched hands. The blue faded slowly, and then the light seemed to pass through yellow glass. Yellow stains fell against white handkerchiefs, against the dark skirts of the women. They were repeated on the trees, on the stones, and on the Sarah. People wept and prayed with uncovered heads, and in the presence of a miracle they had awaited. The seconds seemed like hours, so vivid were they. O Dia, edition of October 17, 1917. And another eyewitness of the miracle of the sun is T. Marto, father of Jacinta and Francisco. He says, "We looked easily at the sun, which for some reason did not blind us. It seemed to flicker on and off, first one way, then another. It cast its rays in many directions and painted everything in different colors. The trees, the people, the air, and the ground. But what was most extraordinary, I thought, was that the sun did not hurt our eyes. Everything was still and quiet, and everyone was looking up. Then at a certain moment, the sun appeared to stop spinning. It then began to move and to dance in the sky until it seemed to detach itself from its place and fall upon us. It was a terrible moment. Thus, T. Martov, a father of Jacinta and Francisco. Another eyewitness of the miracle of the sun was Maria de Capellinha, one of the earliest believers. She remembers this day in the following way. The sun turned everything to different colors, yellow, blue, and white. Then it shook and trembled. It looked like a wheel of fire that was going to fall on the people. They began to cry out, "We shall all be killed." Others called to Our Lady to save them. They recited acts of contrition. One woman began to confess her sins aloud, advertising that she has done this and that. When at last the sun stopped leaping and moving, we all breathed our relief. We were still alive, and the miracle which the children had foretold had been seen by everyone. Thus, Maria de Capellinha, one of the earliest believers.